Well, that's the conclusion of my talk. Thank you, Kelly. Not only is love our decision, but love needs to lead the way. In ministry school, one of our classes is on leadership, not surprising. And the texts we use kind of repeat a mantra over and over. It seems too often, and so often, what we tend to do is when we want to do leadership things, we start with our head. And the stuff we talk about over and over is, if you want to be effective, start with your heart. And then get your head in the game to get it done. And the head plays a part too, and it's a circle. But lead with the heart, and make love a decision that we're going to lead with. So today I want to talk about an issue that's pretty prominent, I think, not only in our country, but probably in the whole planet. It's the issue of the climate issues of our time. So here's what I'm going to say about the science of climate change. A good website I know is NASA. They put people on the moon, they got rovers going all over Mars, nasa.gov. If you want to know about the science, there's a good start. That's all I'm saying about that. When I'm talking about the science. I actually professionally, in my professional life, I do a lot of climate issue things for universities and for counties and for different jurisdictions and speak at conferences. So if later you want to nerd out with me on climate science, then I'm in. But that's not what we're talking today. Because here's the thing about it, I often know too, that whenever issues of the climate issues of the day come up, fear, anxiety, a little stress, a little uncertainty, what does this really mean, what is really going on, a lot of that kind of stuff comes up. So what we talk about in the spiritual journey all the time is fear is not the answer, anxiety is not the answer, but rather faith. Power of faith. Faith in what? Faith in the goodness of the universe. Faith in the goodness of the divine presence that's working through us. And I would suggest the way forward is with love. So I have a story. Actually, I have a couple. Here's the first one. This was actually a really foundational story for me in my life. And it's a little old, and for some of the younger people, you may not know all these references, but most of us will know. In the mid-90s, I was working as an environmental scientist, and I had a job as a chemical engineer. That was my degree, engineering, but I also had a degree in theology. So what do you do with a degree in theology and chemical engineering? Environmental science, or something, whatever. That's what worked for me. And my CEO of my company got invited to a symposium that was down in San Francisco. And the keynote speaker was Mikhail Gorbachev, who had been the president of the Soviet Union. Everyone remember Gorbachev? Well, you guys don't remember. Most of you remember. He was the one with the birthmark, and he was the head of, when the Soviet Union ended, he was the president at the time. He ushered in that total transformation. And when my CEO came back, he said, I got to have a company-wide meeting. Everybody come in the conference room. I have got to tell you what Gorbachev said. You're not going to believe this. So we all sat on the table, and he said, Gorbachev said, the reason the Soviet Union ended was because, you may remember Chernobyl. It was a nuclear facility, and it had a little hiccup, and a lot of the radiation went for hundreds of miles around. And because of it, what they decided to do was, we can't afford so many of the cows and the milk and the wheat and all the material, which was like the breadbasket of Ukraine and the Soviet Union. And if we don't have enough food to feed everybody, so what they did is they mixed a little bit of the contaminated stuff with the good stuff, so that all of it would be low contamination, but none of it too much, so that they could spread the food around. And the mothers found out, Gorbachev said, the mothers found out that they were feeding their children contaminated milk, and the Soviet Union ended. It was love. It was a mother's love for their children. This is one of the largest, countries, empires, what you might want to call it, that ever existed. And sure, you can go read some of the literature online that talks about more of a economic and paramilitary and geopolitical kind of stuff about all that happened to lead up. But Gorbachev said, and since then I've been able to find this and read many articles about it, it was love. It was a mother's love for their children. Kind of like I told you the story earlier with the skunk. You look at what the data says in sort of this play, and then you get underneath that data, sort of like the metadata. You get under the science, like the meta-science. You get under the physics of things, and you look at the metaphysics. You look at what's really humming beneath all this. And what you find is, in the case of that, love. Love forced that issue to happen. Mothers who stood up and said, we love our kids and this is not going to happen. And if this society, if this system isn't going to support us with that, then the system needs to transform. The system needs to change. The system needs to evolve and be something different. And it did. Now I'm making a very complicated thing somewhat simple, but sometimes the simple truths are pretty profound. You know, what the power of love can do. And we make it our decision what kind of transformation can happen in our society, in our lives, in the world, and even on the planet. So, love. So I have another story for you. You know, often we look at Scripture, we think in terms of the book of Scripture, and we go there, and you know, we do that in India quite a bit. New Testament, Christian Scripture, Hebrew Scripture, Bhagavad Gita. I mean, we pull out of all the world Scriptures. But many people would say, and I find this to be true as well, that there's a whole book of revelation of hundreds of millions of years, billions of years actually, before any of that Scripture was written. And what we like to call it is the sacred book of nature. Book of nature. And we can go and we can draw and pull out of that book of nature and find amazing things that teach us stories very much in parallel with what you might see in Scripture, but you see them in a very different way. So I want to tell you a story that I'm going to take it out of the book of nature. I suppose I could start this with once upon a time, but I'll say it this way. One time, about 66 million years ago, as best we can tell. Remember, in the evolution of the world, that's not so long ago. But I want to tell you about another mother whose love transformed it all. And this mother, instead of the mothers in Chernobyl, is our Mother Earth. And a powerful story about what she did to transform. Now, taking just a moment, I used to always, when I first came to Unity, one of the things I was so excited about was we used to talk about how things get created. And we used to say this thing like mind, idea, expression. We all know this, right? That unity, trinity, that the human mind is so powerful. And this is, we talk about our own thoughts, our own, not only our thoughts, but our whole being, our whole essence. Whatever we concentrate on, we will manifest. And it just happens. So a mind or full body, soul comes up with ideas, and those will express. And so the more we can align our ideas with divine ideas, how powerfully they'll express. Those are the most powerful ideas. So that the point of prayer is to align our own consciousness with the consciousness of the divine. To align our thinking, our feeling, our sensibility, our whole essence with what we're learning about divine essence and resonate with that. And that's the powerful part of creating. But I always thought, well, we've been around for, a couple, 300,000 years. We're trying to figure that out, but not that long. Who was creating all this stuff before we were here? What mind was at work? Who was expressing? And it always used to sit with me, and I have to say I've been digging on this question for years, that there's the mind, if you will, and it's, mind is kind of a word we use for people, right? So I'm kind of projecting about humanness onto the universe. But there is this sort of universal consciousness, and even this earth consciousness, this earth desire, this living desire of the entire cosmos that is also resonating with the mind of God and is creating. Billions of years of creation, resonating with the divine essence and creating and creating and creating. And this is really important because that means that there's something about the way the earth is living that is similar to the way we're living. We're aligned. That same divine mind that resonates with us is resonating in the entire planet. It's resonating in the entire cosmos. And this is pretty profound because it means we can align not only with the divine, but all of us aligning together and working together as one. So I'll give you an example. 66 million years ago, here's from the book of nature. This asteroid came out of. So we don't know where it came from. Lots of the studies have looked at different asteroid belts. I don't know where these things are, hundreds of millions of miles away. But somehow this asteroid comes shooting into our solar system. And here we are, coming at our planet Earth. It's a beach ball. I've been waiting to use this for. And I'll show you. Right here, here's the United States. Here's Mexico. This meteor came about 45,000 miles per hour, hurtling through space. And it's like hitting a needle, finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, this thing was they say maybe up to 50 miles wide. But still, that's not very big compared to the whole Earth. Now, if it would have landed in the ocean, it might have just splashed and that would have been it. And it could have landed up at the poles and it would have just hit the ice and that would have been it. But that's not what it did. It landed right in the Yucatan Peninsula, in a place that's now called Chicxulub. It's a Mayan word, and it's an area in the Mayan Peninsula. And even since the 70s, the people from the Mexican Petroleum Company have been noticing as they're out looking for oil, the geologists have been going, what is that big ring out there? What is going on? And it's been over the last 40, 50 years that the scientists have been saying, I think an asteroid hit there. And it turns out, even over the last decade, I mean, I've been following this story for years, but in the last decade, we realized that that was a major event that transformed Mother Earth. And what happened at the time, there was still some dinosaurs left, and there was, wet-winged dinosaurs and feathered dinosaurs and non-feathered, lots of critters. But when that asteroid hit right here in the Yucatan Peninsula, it sent a plume of ash and dust halfway to the moon. And the models have shown this now, and they're shocked. And this is stuff just for the last couple of years we're finding. This huge, and the forest started burning over much of the planet. I was thinking in the summer we look at the AQI, air quality index. Can you imagine what it would have been? Like a million or something, I don't know, really high, obviously. And so the dust and the ash covered the earth. And what happened is, we don't know exactly, I mean, they're just computer models. It turns out that maybe 75, 80% of all the critters on Earth, that was it. It was a transformation. They were gone. Now, it seems a long time ago, but I remember being 7 years old. In Chicago, we used to fill up our car with Sinclair gas. Always had the big green dinosaur. And it used to be you'd get a fill-up, and they'd give you a dinosaur. And I can remember myself, like 6 years old, I would walk around that dinosaur all the time. And it was really heartbreaking as I grew old. It's like, I want to see these things, But here was the big calling, here was the transformation. Now, what happened because of that, the age of the dinosaur ended. This is kind of a gallows humor kind of thing. But the good news was, the age of the mammals began. And this is what led into the rise of all the mammals and all the animals and all the beautiful nature we see today, including us, human beings. It was a transformation that allowed us to happen. But I think back in terms of Mother Earth, and there's a thing that, and I would never say something like, God sent a meteor to smack the earth so that people could come, right? I don't say things like that. But bring it forward when people talk about why things in their life, oh, God did it, The asteroid happened, it was a part of a natural event. But here's what God does in these instances. And I get this from the process theologians. They say that God always has what's called an initial aim, a deep calling that's consistent for not only people, but for nature. And his calling is, I know you suffered. I know there's been a die-off. I know this is a terrible, tragic time. But just like the mothers of Chernobyl, Mother Earth, I'm calling you forward to deepen, to transform, to recreate, to develop anew, to expand consciousness. You had beauty before, but now I'm calling you for more beauty, for different beauty, for a different way of expression, for new possibilities of expression. It was awful, and it's the suffering was terrible. But here's the other side. It's time to be born anew. It's time for all sorts of new possibilities to emerge. And this divine energy is just pulling forward. I love the process theologians say it's always about beauty. Beauty. Just expand, try new things, experiment. Some work, some don't. Keep going, keep trying new beauty. And it's the same story from the book of nature, from 66 million years ago that we hear in our own lives. Something happens, it's difficult. I know. We suffer sometimes, we do. But this is a transformational part to expand. This is a time to try something new. This is a time that gives us new opportunities for growth. Yeah, we may have to wait a while. It took Earth thousands of years to kind of get over that hiccup. Well, in their time, thousands of years, it wouldn't be that for us. But it takes time sometimes, and we transform, and something new comes out, and something different, and this divine calling constantly, it says, this is your chance now to transform. This fall, we're going to do this book. I don't know, has any of you read this yet? You picked it up at the bookstore? Yeah, we got a few. Yeah. Oh, you got it too. This is just such a good book. And we're going to do our 7-week series. But something caught me out of Richard Rohr. He writes this, and he's a Franciscan brother, so he writes it from a Christian perspective. And he says, any kind of authentic God experience will usually feel like love, or suffering, or both. It will connect you to full reality, the capital F, capital R, full reality, at ever new breaths, at ever new depths, until, and he quotes from Corinthians, until God will be all in all. And Richard Rohr says, authentic God experience always expands your seeing of your possibilities, and never restricts it. What else would be worthy of God? In God, you do not include less and less. You always see more and more, and you always love more and more. So let me repeat again, for a point that's been so foundational and so clarifying for me. I love this. The proof that you are a Christian is that you see Christ everywhere else. Not in everybody else. You see Christ everywhere else. We talk a lot about, we recognize the Christ presence in ourselves, and we talk about recognizing the namaste, the bowing, and seeing the Christ in each other. What he's talking about, what I'm saying is, you see the very essence of the Christ presence alive in the entire planet. And the same kind of calling forth of God and the divine essence in each of us is the same calling that's happening in Mother Earth. And that same Mother Earth, a lot of times we talk about, oh, we got to save the earth, right? We got to start fixing things. Well, let me ask you, if you tell me you've got an issue, I go, hey, I know how to fix you. Do you appreciate that? Nobody appreciates that. It's not about fixing. It's about connecting. It's about listening. It's about loving. It's about seeing the all in all. It's about expanding our consciousness. It's about looking at Earth. In Unity, we have a program that's called Earth Care. I love that. How do we care? I would care about a person. I can care about Earth. And Earth, this mother, just like the mothers in Chernobyl, cares about me. It's back and forth. We talk so much about, we got to save the Earth. Well, Earth is saving us. And let's forget saving. I got to love the Earth, and the Earth is loving us. I want to connect with the Earth, and Earth is connecting with us. I want to resonate with the Earth, and the Earth is resonating with us. I want to follow this transformative path, and knowing that the Earth is following the same path. Because if we are alive, we get through our ego and our kind of crazy thinking sometimes, and we just really sit in silence in the presence of the divine that we all recognize in us and work from that place. And recognize that not only are we experiencing that as an individual, and we are experiencing it as a community, but we are experiencing it as a planetary movement. Okay, so back to the very start, climate issues. It's a lot of fear, a lot of moving forward about, well, we gotta start doing things and get busy. But what I suggest is before we get busy doing a whole lot, let's start approaching it and recognizing our own deep connection to Mother Earth. Not as a thing, dead planet, a rock floating around in space. I mean, it's like that moment of awe on the Apollo 10, 11, these folks from when they landed on the moon. Remember the pictures they took with the Earth rising over the moon? And that Earth sitting on a beautiful blue pearl, just this living being, this living entity that's breathing and respirating and radiating and in totally in harmony with us and all living beings. I mean, the Christ presence just scintillates within the planet, just like it does with us. So here's my suggestion, and I'm knee-deep in it too, so I get this, but when some of that talk about climate and the climate issues, there is things to do. I'm not saying there's not. There's things to get busy doing. But right now, people are we're like those meteorites, 7 billion of us on Earth. We could be like the thing that's helping the Earth and hurting it, or we can be the thing that's connecting and loving and supporting this transformation, because things are changing. Well, that's for sure. But the question is, well, how are they going to change? And I suggest, and I think we can change them from the consciousness of this divine energy and change them to the point of the good. Change them to the point of the beautiful. Change them to the point of the truth. And that's our calling. So when you hear stuff about climate issues and maybe a little anxiety, a little nervous, just pause and remember your connection. And before we do anything, just remember that connection and let's approach it from a place of love. So let's lower the lights for a moment. I want to send a blessing on us for our connection and our Christ and our earth. So maybe taking a moment here, taking a deep breath, and recognizing first in the very presence of the divine, the presence of God in our own lives. Connecting in our hearts, knowing we are loved and we are called to love. Knowing we are blessed and we are called to bless. Knowing we are connected and resonating in that connection. Knowing we are a blessing unto ourselves in this connected world, knowing the Christ of ourselves. And then taking another deep breath. And letting the field of our hearts expand. And knowing too we are one in a community, this spiritual community, but all the communities that we are part of. Our friend communities and our home communities, our city communities. We're all part of many groups. Knowing the truth of our unity with each person in that community. We don't work and exist alone, but in this loving field of divine essence. And in that connection, we are tremendously powerful. We are tremendously capable of expressing the good in the world. And then taking one more deep breath. And letting our mind, our thoughts, our souls, our hearts expand. And taking in the whole Mother Earth. Recognizing that she too is part of this whole divine play of consciousness. That we resonate with each other, but also with this living, breathing, beautiful planet that, like us, shares in the spiritual journey, like us, transforms and is called forward to new things, like us, can suffer and be wounded, but still can rise up. Like the mothers of Chernobyl is like a mother who loves each one of us and cares and expands and gives and includes and nurtures. And the very same Christ essence in each of us, in our communities, is alive. The presence of the divine is active in our Mother Earth as well. And as we go forward, our one takeaway is as we practice the presence of God, as we practice the presence of the divine in our midst in our daily lives, may we always recall and may our minds be open and our eyes be open and our consciousness expand to over and over include precious Mother Earth, knowing that she's one with this whole community, this whole divine community, this whole breath of spirit. Amen.